Hey folks, I'm Herschel and we're gonna make something kind of cool today. I am making a Captain America shield as seen in all the Marvel movies. This is one that's been done by several different makers on several different channels. Probably my favorites among them being the Odin Abbott on Odin Makes, and the Lost Wax channel also had a great tutorial on how to do this particular prop. It's a nice little way to bring all those things together so that you yourself could try and do this project. All you need to get is some foam, and you probably have everything else laying around your house. You're gonna need these three spray paints, a silver, a red, and a blue. You're gonna need something to seal your foam, and I'm gonna be using Plastidip. And you're also going to need a yoga ball. All right, now, I've obviously already done this, and I'm not going to waste the time actually showing you how to dome your shield using a yoga ball. Please visit Odin's channel, or the original version of this was on Lost Wax's channel, so go check those guys out. I'll put a link in the description, but that's how you do this with a yoga ball. And this is a single piece of foam. There's a lot of Wonder Woman shields out there that cut the foam and glue it together and you make the curves and things like that. It's way easier to make it out of one piece like this, and that's why I decided to do it this way. This guy sat in my truck on the driveway for about 4 days. At the time we're making this video, we're in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic, so the truck wasn't going anywhere, so I used it as an oven. So this has actually been lashed onto this yoga ball for about 5 days, so we should have a really good heat sealed curve. We are going to put some backing on it to make sure that it holds that shape. So let's get to it. Oh, that is so nice.
Chris Hubert has a free template for the star and shield back on his website, lostwaxoz.com. I'll put a link in the description. I use a straight pen through the center of the star into the hole I used to cut the circumference for the shield to place the star right on top. I trace the outside of the template in permanent marker for my first set of panel lines. There's a second set we'll trace in later. Next, I'll drill holes in my ruler at 5 inches, 7.5 inches, and 10 inches to help me draw the rings on Cap's shield. I use the same hole that's now in the center of the star to draw these lines in with an ink pen. Cut the star pattern down for your second set of panel lines. You'll want to use the straight pen one more time to make sure your star is lined up in the center. Trace the pattern on an ink pen. This will give you a little bit of space in your pattern. Cut the template down one more time for the third set of panel lines inside the star. You can do these freehand. I just like a guide. Okay, now for my favorite part, cutting the panel lines. Make a cut about 1 millimeter deep on each line of the star pattern and the circles that you just drew. Take your time and use a sharp knife. You might want to use a ruler to get as straight a line as possible. Once you've made your cuts, we'll use a heat gun to open up the foam and reveal the three-dimensional pattern. When you're using the heat gun, make sure you keep it moving. If you linger on any one part of the foam, you can overheat it, melt it, or even start a fire. I'm going to use a 10 millimeter piece of floor mat foam, textured side up, because it's a detail piece I don't have to create the backing. I'll draw a line from each corner to find a center point to create the circumference. Then I'll draw one more hole in my ruler, it's really starting to look like Swiss cheese now, to create the final circumference. I'll cut with an inward angle so that it matches the slope on the inside of the shield. This will make gluing a lot easier. Next, we'll cut out 2 brackets for the straps on the back of the shield. This is another part of the awesome free template from Lost Wax, so thanks, Chris. This was a great opportunity to use my bevel cutter from Foamworks. This cuts 90 and 45 degree bevels into your foam perfectly. You can also do this with a razor knife. This is not something I had to do, but it was an added detail that I absolutely loved. Now it's time to make the straps. I used an old leather belt that had kind of died a horrible death, and after some fiddling and measuring, I figured out how much I needed for the first grip. I cut it out of the center so I'd have plenty of room on either side to make the second strap. There was an area of the belt that was damaged, and I tried to save it, but in the end decided to cut it off and drill a couple of new holes with the drill press. I make 2 cuts in the first bracket that go all the way through the foam. This allows me to slip the leather through and create the first strap. I'll leave enough leather on the backside to glue to the bracket. Then the whole thing will be glued to the backing with contact cement. I draw an outline of the bracket onto the textured areas of the foam, then use a sanding stick to open it up. This is probably heat sealed, and I need to do this so that the contact cement will stick. You'll want to do this to the leather as well. Brush contact cement onto the textured areas of the foam, the back of the bracket, and the leather. Once the contact cement has dried to a tacky texture, you can stick it all together. Pulling these pieces apart once the contact cement touches is probably going to result in ripped foam and lots of curse words, so take your time. You can use contact cement thinner, but that's messy, and I would just recommend doing it right the first time. Now, for some reason I decided to put the second strap through the main body of the backing and not the bracket. Still not sure why I did that, but I'm sure it made sense to me at the time. Slide the belt through the slot, and make a mark so you can cut off the excess. Make sure that you leave enough room so that you can glue the belt to the foam. Next, I'll make a diagonal cut in each slit so that the leather will lay flat against the bottom of the foam. I don't want to create a bump on the other side of the shield.
There we go.
I'll use my sanding stick to rough up the leather. I don't have to worry about the foam on this side because it's not heat sealed. I'll apply contact cement, wait for it to dry to a tack, and stick it down. Okay, I had to use a whole lot of contact cement to get the backing to stick to the shield. If you're going to use this much contact cement, make sure you're in an open area, you have a fan on, or you're wearing a respirator. I am impatient, and I don't like to wait for contact cement to dry, so I will use my heat gun on the lowest setting to help it along. It doesn't affect the performance of the contact cement, and I've never had an issue, so that's what I do. There are many methods to keep the pieces from sticking together before you're ready. You can use strips of cardboard, you can use vinyl backing paper, or you can use the get her done method that I'm using here. I start in the center of the shield, pressing the backing into the dome, and I work my way out, making sure that the brackets and the edges are all stuck down. Now it's time to address the outer edge. I start with a 60 grit belt on my belt sander to clean up the profile and then give myself an inner and outer bevel. This isn't necessary, it's just an aesthetic choice that I think looks good. I'll clean up the whole thing using a 120 grit sanding stick and then seal it using my heat gun. I'll go over the whole piece one more time with the heat gun to seal it for painting. There are many products to seal your foam, but the one that I have found that works the best is Plastidip. Each side of the shield will get 2 coats. I always do this outside because I hate the smell of this stuff and it lingers, so please be careful when you're using it. My base color is a silver metallic from Rustoleum. This will be the main color for the star, second stripe, and the back of the shield.
So there are some things that I've learned about this. Number one, the doming on the shield works great. If you are gonna do a project like this, I cannot recommend enough using 12mm foam. This is the third round shield that I've made. I've made 2 Wonder Woman shields and now this one. And the 12mm foam, hands down, far and away, has been the best foam that I've used for that. This thing that I did right here, don't do that. This was a mistake. The way that I put this together, the way that the back panel pulls this down, it's deforming the shield. Really difficult to backtrack that at this point. Now, one of the things that has happened, the sun actually peeled the edges away here so that angle, because that angle was not quite right, I forced it together. That was actually causing a little bit of a problem. As this was drying in the sun, it separated, and that actually is helping me out, and it's helping me to reshape and reform the shield. Another thing I'm not happy with, and that I just miscalculated because I didn't have reference photos, and I can't emphasize enough how important reference photos are on a project, is this first circle here is too wide, or the star is not big enough. If the star was bigger, the size of this circle would work. And then the next thing, I'm actually gonna take this, and I've decided instead of filling this in, I was thinking about how I could fix this, whether I wanted to glue it or I wanted to fill it with some foam clay or whatever. I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna make it an aesthetic part of the shield. I'm gonna take some hot glue. I'm gonna fill that in with hot glue and make it look like it was welded in and call it a day.
Start with a thick bead of hot glue, and once that cools, go back over it using a back and forth motion. This will give you your welding texture. Hit that with some silver spray paint, and then for color contrast, use some black shoe polish. This is a method used by everybody from Odin to Adam Savage, so you know it works well. Put the shoe polish on thick and wipe off the excess with a paper towel. You can do the same thing with black acrylic paint and a little water. I chose to use a fresh copy of my star template to mask the star for my second color. This meant less tape and less chance I was going to tear up my silver paint. I used a very convoluted way to mask this first round of blue off. I had to spray paint inside, which was no fun. Literally in the next shot, you'll see my fix to this problem, which was the cone of shame, which you'll see there. I stuck small pieces of tape to the table and then carefully placed them around that silver stripe, and then I cut out the masking just to make sure it didn't mess up that silver paint. My red was a gloss pepper red from Krylon. It went on beautifully. Look how well that cone of shame is working. Just perfect. Back inside, after everything had dried, I slowly peel off my masking to reveal that silver, and then the cone of shame will come off, and it's just such a beautiful reveal.
Oh, it is a cap shield.
I do a little bit of touch-up on the silver star and the silver ring, and then I'll come back and shove some black acrylic paint into each of these panel lines. This is going to give me some really nice color separation. I am going for a museum finish on this shield, so I won't be weathering it. So this is basically the last paint step. There are rivet heads on the strap brackets, so to pull off this look, I'm going to use brass file fasteners. I punch holes in the foam and then cut down the fasteners. Please be smarter than me and wear safety glasses. A dab of super glue, and I press the fasteners into place. My last step will be to weather all of the leather and the rivet heads with some shoe polish.
And there you have it, Captain America's shield from, well, you take your pick of the Marvel movie. I want to give a big shout out to Goldberry Cosplay for bringing her awesome Captain Carter cosplay out to help me show off this shield in style. Now, a few things happened between the finish of the build and now that I wanted to tell you about in case you want to build this prop for yourself. Biggest thing was the silver spray paint. I ended up not liking how it looked in pictures. It was brown, it was blotchy, just wasn't good. So I went over everything with a silver acrylic and it just popped. It looked fantastic, and it had an added bonus of being able to use a high gloss clear coat on top of it. It gives it a nice sheen. It catches light beautifully. This thing looks like Captain America's shield now. The other big change that I had was this blue spray paint. I had a lot of headaches with chipping, with scuffing, with marking, and if I was doing a battle damage shield like the end of Endgame shield, that would be perfect because it chips off very naturally. But I wanted a museum finish, so if I had this to do over and I wanted to do a museum finish, I would definitely mask off each area and put each color down on the Plastidip by itself. If you want to build this prop for yourself, I'm going to include a materials list in the description along with links to the other incredible makers who have helped me put my prop together. That's going to do it for this episode of Hold My Barge. If you liked the video, please give us a like, hit the notification bell to subscribe, and don't miss any of the foam-tastic content we have coming your way. That's going to be it for me. I'm going to go punch Hitler.